Social justice and linguistic human rights in dual language programs. But first, we need to take into account that United States it's full of immigrants. It has a lot of immigrants. It's a country that was built upon immigrants. There are a lot of Latino children who don't have the chance uh, to study in a proper way because there are no established or they were no um bilingual programs already established in the country. Um, the author defends that in order to acquire a better level of reading skills or reading proficiency in English, you need to first learn how to read in your first language, in your native language. This does not happen in many cases of Latino children because parents, some of their parents don't know how to read or they're too busy working um, or they just, the kindergartens don't have bilingual programs. So they have learned how to speak Spanish but then they didn't learn how to read Spanish because when they got into kindergarten, they started teaching them how to read English, a language that they had little contact with because a little baby kid has contact with their parents, and their parents, most of them, don't speak English, at least not fluently. So, in order to achieve better results in reading skills, you need to learn how to read first in your native language. Bilinguophobia, it's a term that the author uses for the excessive fear to bilingualism. Um, by this, um, there was a lot of bilinguophobia in the United States by the end of World War I because German immigrants were using German, and there were a lot of German immigrants. So they declared as a state policy to eliminate any foreign language. This happened after World War I and after World War II, and this was to avoid English to losing its strength and also to lose national identity, right? So they wanted to keep their identity and patriotism, and by then they thought that the only way to do that was by abolishing any other language different than English within the country. Due to the thousands or maybe millions of immigrants that they arrived in the United States after the World Wars, both one and two. So they eliminated the foreign languages. Now, which are the benefits of bilingual programs? Well, bilingual programs first encourage some kind of language diversity, um, and by enriching the language diversity of a community, you acquire or acknowledge different points of view. Uh, you increase educational opportunities for all students because you will not only be pointing at the English spoken students, but you will also give the option to study to those who do not speak English. So you will be increasing the opportunities for educational access, and also that language diversity will give cultural diversity and will teach them to respect other. The students will learn to respect different points of view or different ways different ways of thinking. Um, so you need to protect the native language. Although bilingual programs are very important, it's very important not to extinguish the native language, because you will be also extinguishing their identity, their history, their family, and many things that influence in their self-esteem, self acceptance, and many other psychological factors that will could maybe uh, be affected by the fact of like taking importance away from their native language. So schools need to assist students by acquiring the new language while maintaining the native tongue. Um, Perfect. Now, the cultural elements in language. Language, it's not just language, it's full of culture. It represents actually a culture through its codes. So, cultural elements in language are many, but what is important to teach the kids or for students to understand is that like the language will help them understand that knowledge has political and moral elements in itself, and this is very important for them to understand it, because it's actually what they're going to use to um, transfer their ideas or transmit their ideas. um, so which are the goals of a dual language program? Well, a dual language program, um, its goal is to produce bilingual students, bicultural students, and biliterate students, um, which means that they will be able to communicate themselves in two different languages. They will also know two different cultures, um, with all the consequences and benefits that this has. And they will also be biliterate, which means that they will be able to study, produce, read in two different languages. Now, those are the benefits from a bilingual program or a dual language program, but the benefits of bilingualism itself, the state of being bilingual. First, educationally, well, it benefits everybody because, as we said before, it will give the chance to other students who don't speak English to access to education. Cognitive benefits are it enriches or improves creativity and problem solving in students because it gives them two different point of views. Like you don't see things through your only language anymore because now you have two languages to contrast different vocabulary, and that gives you different points of view, which enriches your creativity and your problem solving skills. Socioculturally, it expands their world in and also expands their world because they will have access to more places in the world, and they will be able to communicate there. And also, it increases the respect towards difference. Okay, economically, it benefits because bilingual or multilingual people are very valuable nowadays in the market because of this globalization. And okay, perfect. Now, the problems of administration are that administration sometimes blocks development because you have to stick to the rules, stick to the procedures. And these procedures, these rules, they sometimes block the progress. They block progress because in it happens very often that programs and rules and procedures were established long time ago, very long ago. which means that they're not current anymore. They're not practical, so they block development. Administration, that's the problem. Now, support. Why support? Well, in a bilingual program, students need support in many ways, many ways. So you need to support them. They need to feel a continual support in order to encourage themselves. You need to give them confidence. They need to feel confident. So by supporting them in the process, they will feel confident about themselves, about their learning process. Now, you need to give them a timely feedback. And the teacher needs to be aware of the cultural literary differences in class. Why is that? Because they might write differently in their culture. The author gives an example about Mexican well-educated children who have a conception of writing which implies that they need to write very extensive and with very complex vocabulary sentences at the beginning of a text, otherwise it's not well written. But in English, you need to go to the point. So you need to, teacher needs to understand these cultural differences in terms of literacy. Otherwise, he might be unfair with his students. Now, they need support in comprehension. Comprehension-wise, sometimes you can easy comprehension by shortening sentences, rephrasing, doing verbal emphasis. They also need a lot of support in terms of vocabulary, because sometimes language learning or second language learning, it's blocked because of the lack of vocabulary input or vocabulary support. Because in the native language, people have the advantage that they are seeing vocabulary all the time in every single scenario, in their houses, in the mall, in the park, in the school, because everybody is using new vocabulary and you're learning it while you have contact with it. But in a foreign language, you need to have contact with that vocabulary within the class, and it's not enough with the class exercises or reading. You need to have some type of support, so you need to expand it somehow in class. The assessment has to be within the classroom settings, but also real life settings, so you can actually have a clear view of how well is the process going. You need to know if the language can be used in a real life setting, which is what language is meant to be. And finally, social justice. It's a social justice program because it's not subtractive. It's not trying to eliminate a language. It's trying to have two languages coexisting, not one overcoming the other. It's not remedial because it's not trying to fix something. It's trying to enrich a process, it's not compensatory. It's not giving something that is missing. It's giving actually something extra. It's enriching the program, as we said before, and it's not imposed, and it's not supposed to be. It has to be an agreement. And the dual language program, it has plenty of results, but it's meant to be introduced gradually. So first, it should be introduced 10-90, which means 10% of the foreign language and 90% in the native language, because we need to keep that native language, give its importance. Then you move to 20. After a while, you move from 10 to 90 to 20-80, which means 20% foreign, 80% native, then 30-70, and finally you will be reaching a 50-50 after the foreign language has its basis. Thank you very much.